G'day guys, my name's Stills20 and welcome to City Skylines Sunset Harbour. So as you're all very much aware of, Paradox Interactive have just released their new DLC Sunset Harbour, and I was lucky enough to get my hands on the DLC a few months before the release date. It was only just being released as of last week. This video is part 1 to a 2-part series. The next video will be out in a couple of days, and in this series I'm going to be building a city only using the base vanilla assets and the assets introduced with the new Sunset Harbour DLC. So I'm very limited with the amount of stuff that I'm using. As you guys know, I generally use quite a lot of mods and assets from the workshop, so this was actually quite a big challenge. So why did I have early access and why am I doing this series? So basically back in February, Paradox Interactive approached me and Cheeshes, who is another YouTuber, and they asked us to create a city, one each, to use as the base city for their trailer that was basically advertising the new DLC. So I said yes, because I thought that was a really cool opportunity. And I also recorded the entire process. So you're seeing the city that I built for the trailer. So you actually will probably recognize a bunch of the aspects of the city from the trailer if you've already seen it. You should check out the trailer because I think it turned out pretty nice, and it was really cool seeing how it all came together because I sort of saw behind the scenes of what they wanted. I was under very specific direction for what they wanted and what I had to do, which I'm going to talk about in this video. So in this episode, I'm just going to be doing a time lapse as I begin the process of building the city. I will probably do most of the build in this episode, and then in the next video you'll see me finish it off, and then we'll do a live play and I can show you all the ins and outs of the city and talk a bit more about the functionality of it, because it ended up working quite nicely. I can't remember if I ended up making a profit in it, but it's yeah, I do really like the way that turned out, even though it was a very big challenge working with just base vanilla assets and no other DLC. So no mass transit, no park life, only the one DLC and the base vanilla game. In saying that, we were allowed to use a couple of mods just to help us with like workflow and getting the job done a little bit faster. However, the mods that we were allowed to use, they don't actually, all the things that I did in the city, you can still do in the vanilla game. So let me give it a couple of examples. I use Move It, but I don't use Move It in a way that is impossible without mods. So, it's only used so that I can drag something a little bit closer to the road without having to completely rezone an area. I also use Plop the Growables. You'll see me use that in a little while. But I use that in a sense that only placed down a couple of buildings that I think were, more eye candy. But you can actually achieve the same effect by just waiting for a particular building to grow and then making that a historical building. So it was only 3 or 4 mods that we were allowed to use, but we had to be so careful with the way that we built this, because if at any time the city looked like it was was built using mods, then they couldn't actually use that aspect of the city. So we had to be really careful. Quite often you'll actually see that I'm using mostly with Anarchy turned off, because I just didn't want to, accidentally build something and then realize that you couldn't do that without the base vanilla of the game, pretty much. So like I said, this was a pretty challenging process. It was really interesting, and I actually just really enjoyed the whole thing. I think it was a really refreshing way of building, because I'm so used to creating cities in my own style, however I like, and using whatever I like. Whereas building this city, I was under some strict guidelines for things that they wanted to see in the city, and just being restricted with particular types of assets. That was really quite hard. So some of the things that Paradox wanted from these cities. So something that is really unique about the trailer that they released, and something that I think is different from the other trailers, is that there's actually 2 cities that they used to create that trailer. There's one that I created, which is what they wanted was something sort of based on Sydney, something based on a Western style city that's on the coastline to really show off the the harbour aspect to the DLC. Cheeshes also had to build a harborside city, but his one was based in Europe, so he was looking at more inspiration from cities I can't even think of any carbon-sized cities in Europe. But I think he's looking at some places in Spain and Italy and stuff. So they wanted 2 different cities, but they wanted us to be in sync in terms of the types of buildings we were using and where iconic and landmarks would sit within the city. So we could choose where they were, but we had to be in sync with what we placed down. So for instance, there's like the building within the middle of the harbour. For me, I ended up putting like an opera housey type of building, whereas Chisha's, he built a fort within that area, and we had to like communicate to each other where we were going to build certain buildings and the types of terraforming we were going to do. And the reason why Paradox wanted us to do that was they wanted to create a lot of cool transitions within their trailer to show like 2 different cities but with similar effects, like similar buildings in similar locations, and then see the transport and the different features of the DLC sort of interacting with the environment like that, which actually turned out really cool. Like I really loved the transitions. I think that's one of the highlights of that trailer. I think that's what sets it aside to the other ones. And yeah, so you might actually, so maybe go back and check out the trailer because you might notice a couple of interesting aspects like that. So there's probably about 10 or so buildings that Chisha's and I placed down. Different buildings, of course, but they've got similar build styles, or like parks are in similar locations and train stations are in similar spots, and the industries in the same area as well. So 2 different cities, but they are in sync at some point. But then in saying that, Paradox were very clear that we could create any sort of style city we wanted within particular guidelines, of course. And the other thing that we had to do was we really had to showcase the features of the DLC. So everything that the DLC has to offer, we really had to make a really big effort to show those particular things in like some really eye candy and unique locations. So you can actually see me placing down like pretty much all the unique buildings, not just within the DLC, but just like all the buildings I can choose from, because I actually started like to struggle. I was like, what sort of buildings do we have just in the base game and in the DLC? And so I had to like place them all down and figure out exactly where I wanted to place them within the city. So that was a bit challenging because I couldn't just go, okay, like I'm going to place down multiple of these ones and make these buildings taller than others. Like I had to think about whereabouts and how I was going to place down each building and in what location. In terms of inspiration, I was probably taking more inspiration from Sydney than anything else. So the harbour, I think, will look maybe a little bit like Sydney, but in saying that, the whole landscape is not like Sydney at all. So, there might be some aspects of it, but then some aspects definitely not so. And that was the other thing. We couldn't change the landscape too much. We had to, really sort of stick with the landscape that we were given and, not, doing anything too crazy in terms of terraforming. So that was also a big challenge because you guys know I really love building in like a mountainous type of landscape. So that was really challenging. The different intersections I'm using, so these are downloaded from the workshop. I was allowed to do that. Obviously, it would have taken me twice the amount of time if I had to build my own intersections, so I ended up just grabbing a bunch from the workshop. I can't remember exactly who created most of them, but again, I had to be really careful with the ones that I grabbed from the workshop. They couldn't have mass transit and they couldn't have any sort of anarchy, so a lot of the intersections that I'm using, not the types of ones that I usually choose from. I usually go for ones that are using anarchy or, by a specific author, creator. I usually love, I think my Artesian, he creates some of the best ones, but I was just like searching for vanilla types of intersections, and any ones that I found were using some sort of anarchy or, something that I probably couldn't get away with using, it to just delete, unfortunately. So the city itself, it's definitely not my style of building, I guess, because instead of sort of building something that's like a really quite realistic looking city, instead I had to just go for building a city that was showcasing different aspects, which I guess is similar to Marble Mountain, because Marble Mountain is a lot of like showcasing of, features, things that I find interesting. But, at least with Montana or something, I'm, trying to still trying to build within a realistic sense. Whereas this DLC, so this city, I couldn't do that. I had to really be careful with, you know, making sure that all the aspects of the new DLC was showcased in, you know, interesting ways and in different ways as well. So not just doing the same trick. So you'll actually see me working on the metro at the moment, which I think is like a really fantastic addition to the game. And I wanted it to feature a lot within this city. So, of course, pulling out my classic $2 move by putting a metro line through the middle of a highway. That is a classic move. But I figured, you know what, we're going to stick with the classic moves by me. That was a real challenge, though, because I can't use Anarchy, so I couldn't actually like get it super close. So instead, I had to get it pretty far away from the highway. I didn't want it to look like I was, you know, cheating at all. So I am using Move It, but it is... like what I'm doing is totally possible with, you know, just the base game, you know, just with a bit more patience, really. You got to use more patience, I guess, with the base game. And I also wanted to like travel along the riverside. So, you know, so along the water's edge, actually that's like something quite similar with Sydney. There's a train line that goes along the ocean too, which I wanted to do. I thought that would be like a nice little nod to my home city. And, yeah, I also wanted it to be quite functional too. I don't know why, like it didn't need to be. It could have just done like spirals underground, which it does, to be honest. Like there's a couple of spirals underground that probably aren't very realistic within a city, but I did want it to get people around fairly well. So you will see, you know, some better functionality of the things that I build. Probably better in the next episode where we do a live play. So, like I said, I did really enjoy stripping back and just trying to use as little mods and assets as possible. Of course, this is like as stripped back as I get, so I don't really do much more vanilla than this. Really only using like some very, very essential mods. Not essential, just mods to basically emulate this vanilla game, but just, you know, using them just to make things a little bit faster, pretty much. But I do really enjoy doing this, so I'm actually going to start a very short new series. It's going to be based on a real life city, and I'm only going to I will be using mods. I won't be using not nearly as much as I am in Marble Mountain, but I am only using vanilla assets. I will be using stuff from the DLCs, because I think the DLCs add a lot to the game, but yeah, I'm going to be stripping back completely. It's going to be really, really short. I'm not going to do, like, it's not going to be a big series. It's probably only going to be like 10 episodes or something. I've already started working on it, and it should be out next weekend. You know, fingers crossed. I've got the footage, I've got everything recorded. I just, you know, just want to see if I feel like releasing a Marble Mountain episode instead. And the only hint I'm going to give you about that series is that it's based on an American city. So have a little bit of a guess in the comments below. If you think you know, and if you're a patron, don't comment because you guys already know. But have a guess. Like, what city do you think I'm going to try and build? And why do you think that? Why do you think I'm going to try and build that? It's probably not going to be Los Angeles because I've built that like twice now, to be honest. And it is based in America. So have a think. What do you think? What area do you think I'm going to try and build with only vanilla assets? Yeah, hopefully next weekend I release it, and let me know if you're interested in something like that. Again, it's going to be very short. It's not going to be a big series. It's only really going to, you know, just be a bit of a challenge. See if I can build something realistic by stripping back completely. So, again, I had to really showcase a lot of the different aspects of the new DLC, and as part of that I had to place down everything that the DLC offers. So I mean, that was no problem at all, because they actually offer quite a lot of really cool and unique buildings, in particular the ones that are introduced in terms of the transport systems. So there's this like really great hubs. I can't remember all the functionality of the hubs, but these hubs are really quite cool, because they allow you to mix different types of services, and without like passengers having to completely change platforms or you know, go too far away from it. So I was trying to build a lot of them close to the downtown, and a lot of the features of those new services, those new hubs, are you know, got to do with the metro line and the new bus system as well. So there's a interstate bus line, which I'm tempted to just get this DLC just for Marble Mountain, because I think that'd be quite cool. Oh yeah, again, let me know if you think I should get this DLC just for Marble Mountain. I obviously do have this DLC already, but I haven't enabled it because I want Marble Mountain to be downloadable to anyone, and I don't want the more DLCs I use for that series, the less accessible it is to people. So let me know if you think I should get it, because there are some aspects that I really like about this DLC for Marble Mountain, and I've pretty much only started the new well, it's not the only reason, but a big reason why I've started the new series is because I wanted to use a lot of the features of this DLC. So let me know if you think I should get it for Marble Mountain, because I think the helicopters would be really cool. There's new features with the airport, which I think would be awesome. I love the trolley buses, but I don't think they suit the theme that I'm going for with Marble Mountain. And the interstate transport, I think, is awesome. So let me know what you think. I'll be curious to see what your suggestions are. So I'm focusing mostly on the downtown now, and I wanted to get like a pretty decent skyline, so that's why I'm using Plop the Growables. However, I won't be using it for every area of the city. I wanted to let a lot of this grow naturally, because again, it has to look like you're able to build this using vanilla, so just without using mods. So I didn't want everything to look like it's been plopped, and I'm not dragging anything closer to each other. Like, I just want to leave them where they are and make it look like it's been grown naturally, which sounds weird when you're talking about a building. But yeah, the skyline wanted to have like a particular look, so I'm just placing down buildings, trying to get things quite tall in this area as well, because I didn't want it to be a small, I like a nice big skyline. So there's that skyline there. That's also a similar location to Chisha's skyline. And I also just wanted to like start placing down where I wanted the industry to go, which is pretty far away from the downtown, and there's like a whole suburb in between the industry area and the main downtown section. But that's like fairly realistic or at least practical when you're trying to build like a vanilla city, when you're trying to keep pollution away from the downtown or pollution away from residents. Whereas I don't usually play with those sort of features. I usually just build them pretty close to each other. But there is actually a big introduction of the fishing industry within the new DLC, so I had to showcase that too. So I'm placing down this industrial area because eventually, in the next episode at least, I'll be working on the fishing industry a lot more. And you also saw me put down the new airport, which is just an amazing looking airport, by the way. That's like, I almost just want to place that down in Marble Mountain and say that's the airport, But it's really cool because it mixes in the metro line, so it's also a hub. So it's actually classified as a hub rather than just an ordinary airport. So it mixes in the metro line, and there's also the helicopters there too. And I'm pretty sure the interstate bus line is there too, but I could be wrong. It's been like 4 months since I recorded this, so probably a little bit rusty with what's actually in this DLC. But yeah, now I'm placing down a bit of the harbor area, because this is like a major showcase for the DLC. It's all about this harbor and the different aspects that's introduced with it. The fish market is just like one little aspect of it, but I really love all that fishing industry too. That, again, want to get that for Marble Mountain, so that's another reason why. But I did want to put a bit of detail into this area, because I knew that this would probably feature a fair bit within the trailer. So I've placed down the fish market, and I also want to put down a bit of fish industry too, just around here. And I thought it'd be cool to have a bit of a harbor walk around this area. So I decided to get this dirt road, so this dirt path, and just raise it up a bit so that it creates a bit more of an edge for this seaside area. I don't know why I'm forgetting my words, but I am. Yeah, I thought that kind of worked well, and something I'm probably going to end up doing in some of my other series, to be honest, because I think it hides that cliff a lot better than if you were just to leave it natural, and just allows people to walk around too, which I think is a much more natural and realistic look. And some of these vanilla trees are quite decent too, that I actually don't mind them, especially compared to the ones that were first given to us when the game first came out. I believe like a lot of these ones were introduced with the Park Life DLC, and they're pretty decent, so I've been placing a fair bit of them down. Not that I've got much of a choice, but I've been placing them down because I think they look pretty good. And just working on the industry, just wanted to place down a lot of the buildings around here, but I end up just zoning out a lot of it. And that's something I'm going to utilize in my next vanilla series, is zoning. I'm not going to, well, there'll be parts where I do the same technique of just placing things down, but I'm going to be getting back into zoning. I'm sort of like changing my mind about the use of zones. So yeah, look forward to that, or not look forward to that. I don't know. I don't know if you're going to look forward to it or not, but yeah, it'll be a much more efficient way of building a bigger city, because that's sort of my plan for this year, is to build, to have a lot smaller series rather than doing these like big 2-year projects that I've sort of been doing for you know, the last like 3 years on my channel. I've only really built like 4 or 5 cities, and they've all been massive projects. Whereas this year I plan to do like a bunch of smaller projects, because I actually realized that I really enjoy the process of planning cities, and you know, I always have so many ideas, but I can only do a handful of them because I'm so busy working on these like much larger projects. So instead, I'm just going to be leaving the big projects to the ones that are already existing, like Sichuan Province and Marble Mountain. Even though Sichuan Province's days are numbered, I think I'm going to be wrapping that up somewhat soonish. But Marble Mountain is something I'm going to be working on for a while, and I plan to just do like some much smaller projects, 10, 15 episodes maximum sort of stuff. But guys, that is it. Hope you've enjoyed it. The next one will be out in a couple of days, where we finish off this whole city, and I'll do a bit of a live play to show you a bit more about it. I want to give a special shout outs to some patrons like John Van Gert, Theory Birag, and Christopher C. Penny. Thank you guys so much for your support and Patreon. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Much appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.